Good evening and welcome to the broadcast. Glad you are with us. We're going to be joined tonight by Todd Bensman, and we're going to talk about a brand new article he has out because apparently some of these colleges are honoring leaders of Hamas, terrorists, if you will. And then we wonder why these kids act like this, right? And then we're going to be joined by Colonel Rob Maness. Here's a question for you. Why is China buying up so much copper? We have a source that has notified us from one of the shipping cargo container terminals that there is, like never before, he claims, large volumes of copper being shipped to China. What could possibly be going on? We'll also ask the Colonel about the U.S. precision-guided weapons that are, well, falling prey to Russia's electronic warfare, not working so well. We also have the Abrams tank, as I reported tonight. What's that, about $10 million being blown up by $500 drones. So we have a lot to talk with him about. Are we moving closer to war with China over Taiwan? Question mark. We'll deal with that tonight. Michael Reagan checks in. He texts me today. Apparently, LA County made this Jane Fonda Day. Well, today is May 1st. That's a Communist Day celebration. I guess that would be appropriate for Jane. Michael Reagan will check in. And then how did his father, then Governor Ronald Reagan, handle the protesters at Berkeley? We'll show you an old black and white video footage I've seen a gazillion times, and I've watched it because it's just fun to watch. It's encouraging to see someone actually stand up to the Marxist professors or cultural Marxist professors, whatever you want to call them. Where are men like that today? Michael Reagan will tell us what his father would have to say about what's going on college campuses right now. And then, of course, we have breaking news that the House of Representatives has passed a bill that goes after anti-Semitism. Well, I'm opposed to anti-Semitism, but what I'm not opposed to is the limit of free speech. And apparently, this piece of legislation, as it reads tonight, and I'll show you a screenshot, would deem anti-Semitism saying that Jesus was killed by the Jews. Well, in part, yes, but reality is he was killed by the Romans, and he was killed also by you and by me. And reality is he laid down his life willingly as a sacrifice. That's what the Bible says. And he took it up again, did he not? But all of us have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. All of us are what nailed Christ to the cross, our sins, right? But many on social media tonight are saying we're being ruled by the Zionists, that the Zionists are about to steal our freedom of speech. Well, I think this bill is horrible as it's written. It needs to be fixed without a doubt. Here's one Christian Zionist tonight saying, I'm opposed to this piece of legislation if it has this kind of language. In fact, I think what this is all about, folks, is the Hegelian dialectic process, pitting opposites against each other, deliberately trying to create friction between, well, what is a natural, should be, and in often cases is a natural coalition, Christians and Jews, the Judeo-Christian worldview. And of course, the enemies of America, those who desire to destroy the Christians and the Jews, the Judeo-Christian worldview, want to divide that camp, right? And so they want to use the Hegelian dialectic to pit us against each other, trying to divide us. Well, it's not going to work, not on this broadcast at least, and not with many of you. We'll talk about that piece of legislation and pray that it gets corrected before it gets into being a law. Let's go first tonight to journalist and researcher, author, guy that puts it at risk over and over, traveling all over the world into dangerous locations and places, Todd Bensman. He joins us tonight. He has a couple big articles out. Todd, welcome back to the broadcast. Thanks for being with us.
Great to be here. Thanks. Good to be here again.
Great to have you on, Todd. I want to go to something you just tweeted about, 10 minutes or so ago, if I can find it. Here we go. Here it is. Here it is. Look at that. Tell me what that is, Todd, please.
Well, that is the main lobby of the Columbia Journalism School at the university. This is the vaunted paragon of journalism education, the gold standard of journalism education, a memorial in the main lobby of its building called Pulitzer Hall. Pulitzer because he was the one who established this school 120 years ago. That shrine that you see there with all the photos is supposedly of fallen journalists killed in action in Gaza. But when I took a look at the names and started to go through the list and check out who they were, I found that at least 15 of them worked for Al-Aqsa TV, which the U.S. State Department and the U.S. Treasury declared a terrorist organization 12 years ago, 13 years ago during the Obama administration. Probably 11 more worked for the Palestinian Islamic Jihad propaganda arm. PIJ also is a U.S. State Department designated terrorist organization. Now, this is the Columbia School of Journalism. This is like the gold standard of American journalism. I mean, this is where they issue the Pulitzer Prizes every year. And the fact that they have this shrine up on the wall shows me one of two things. Either they did not actually apply the journalistic principles and practices that they preach in class to figure out who all these people really were, or they actually did do that and don't care and put it up anyway because they want to lionize people that work for terrorist organizations. They're fine by that. Now, I have this piece up in the Daily Mail. It went up this morning. Nobody else has written about this shrine. Everything that you're hearing about Columbia University is happening elsewhere on campus. The school has not responded to any of my requests for interviews about this. Also not a very good journalistic practice to stonewall other journalists who have legitimate questions to ask you, Dean. And the wall right now, if you walk into the main journalism building, this is what you'll see, as though all these people were noble, actual journalists rather than propagandists who were operating to support murder, killing, genocide, and death. That's what my story's about today in a nutshell, a long nutshell.
Well, you're doing great work, no doubt about it. And of course, we know that some of these so-called journalists, some of them were embedded on October 7th, were taking a lot of these pictures, videos. I mean, apparently they had advance notice. They obviously didn't do anything to warn anyone. That's I would guess is totally against rules of professional journalism, correct?
Well, for example, the shrine in the journalism school there is based on a list that was put together by another vaunted organization called the Committee to Protect Journalists, and they routinely have KIA lists, to pay tribute to legitimate journalists, and they have criteria for how to get on one of those lists. One of and the shrine in the journalism school is based on the Committee to Protect Journalists list, and one of those on the list says that he died on October 7th of gunshot wounds in Rafah, which is in the southern part of Gaza. But there was no shooting or gun battles in Rafah on October 7th. The Israeli invasion didn't happen for 6 more weeks. So I have to ask, I think all of us have to ask, I think those journalists who put that list together and said that they vetted it with high journalistic standards before they published it, need to find out whether that guy was one of the journalists you're talking about who went out with the terrorists to film and document their attack. October 7th of a gun in a gun battle in Rafah, that wasn't happening in Rafah on October 7th.
Wow, more great research by Todd Bensman. Let's go to another one. Todd's a busy guy. Look at this. He's already got another article, not only at the Daily Mail, but at his home base, Center for Immigration Studies, CIS.org. A secret finally revealed. Americans can know the U.S. cities receiving hundreds of thousands of immigrants flying from abroad. Brand new article out today, May 1st. Tell us about this, please, Todd.
I mean, I've been on with your audience many times
over
the last about the flights program. I'm pretty sure I was the only one reporting about this in the country, and thanks to you, it was magnified. Nobody was really paying attention to this, but one day it caught fire, and people were like, what do you mean they're flying immigrants in from foreign airports into U.S. airports? I have been after the list of which airports, because all these American cities are staggering under the burden of illegal immigrants that are showing up in their cities with their hands out, and they're breaking the bank. I, a month ago, reported finally where they were, mostly in Florida. The vast majority of them were coming into Ron DeSantis's Florida, being flown right into Miami International and Fort Lauderdale and in Tampa, et cetera. So I had this out a month ago, but the House Homeland Security Committee happened to be tracking what I was trying to do. They were trying to get their own list in their own way. The administration was blocking both of us, completely refused to give us the names of these airports and cities. And finally, mine went to litigation. We're suing in federal court for them. The House Homeland Security Committee had to go to subpoena, and they subpoenaed DHS for the information. And they just yesterday got clearance to release what they got back, which are the 45 cities that they're flying into. So I wrote a piece about putting the whole thing into context and laying out what's important about the new information compared to what I've been telling you and your audience for the last month or three about what we already know. So by now we have a really good idea for the first time, thanks to these battles that I and the House have been fighting, to figure out about these flights. They're no small number. They've flown in about 400,000 foreign nationals in a year into all of these American cities. So this is a very significant program that's bringing a lot of people in invisibly, sight unseen. The whole program is secretive and invisible. And I feel like that's kind of part of my job, is to make the invisible more visible, and yours too. So I thank you for your support for this. That's just the latest installment. We're not finished yet by a long shot.
Well, of course, we appreciate the partnership with you, Todd. That's for sure. Before I let you go tonight and go to Colonel Manus, I do want to ask you, CBS last night, we played the report, the video report. They are saying the White House is seriously considering bringing in perhaps hundreds of thousands of Gazans from Gaza. That would be horrific. I mean, the governor of Florida is speaking out today saying this is not good. They would not assimilate. We don't need this. I mean, there's only one reason you would do this, and that is, I believe, you're deliberately trying to take down the Western societies. What say you?
Well, I've been to Gaza. I've been studying what's been going on there for many years. Hamas is here in the United States. I've been covering them for decades.
Yeah. Here
in the United States. I know Gaza pretty well. And what people need to understand is that if you live in Gaza, if you're born and raised there and you live there, from cradle to grave, literally, you are indoctrinated by every civil institution in that strip to hate, to want to murder, to kill, to commit genocide against Jews, and especially against Americans, especially against Christians and Jews. Those people who live there can't help but be impacted in their world viewpoint by that level of intense indoctrination for their entire lives, which is, again, all about hatred and genocide and terrorism as a legitimate response to things that you don't like, and murder as a legitimate response to things that you don't like. They love Hamas there. Every poll shows 70, 80, 90% support for Hamas and everything that they do, and especially the October 7 attacks. If you want to bring those people into the United States, you're just borrowing trouble you don't need.
Indeed.
You do not have to bring. I think that no Gazans should be ever allowed into the United States. And go ahead and quote me and pan me for saying that I'll just say it again.
I agree with you. And we have studied UNRWA, that UN group, and their supplementary curriculum, teaching the kids to be anti-Semites, to hate the Jews, to be involved in jihad. And some of the students who graduated from that school, according to documented reports, were some of the terrorists on October 7th. Some of the staff of the school were rejoicing over the attacks. We showed their social media accounts on the air.
Listen, the piece that we were talking about earlier in the Daily Mail, 13, 14 of those Gazans that are memorialized on the Columbia Journalism School wall work for Al-Aqsa TV. And Al-Aqsa TV is got somewhat infamous about 10, 12 years ago because they have this cartoon character that does a children's show, dressed up named Falfor, dressed up in a big furry costume, speaking in a high-pitched tone and talking about jihad and murder and martyrdom and suicide bombing, urging children to pick up an AK-47, urging them to commit terror attacks when they grow up. And the pressure about Falfor, the character in the children's TV show on Al-Aqsa Media, grew so great that they brought in an Israeli actor to pose as an Israeli to beat Falfor to death. And then they just replaced Falfor with a big fuzzy furry bee who just kept on with the same thing. And they're still doing children's program, preaching to children to murder and kill and hate. That's what goes on in Gaza.
It absolutely is. Well said. ToddBensman.org if you want to get his book, Overrun and Border Wars. ToddBensman.org, ToddBensman.org, and CIS.org is where he, or is it ToddBensman.com?
Yes, and you can sign up for my newsletter there, and all my social media is there too. ToddBensman.com, ToddBensman.com, and then CIS.org. That's the organization he works with, CIS. CIS.org, his personal website. You can sign up for his newsletter, find out about his book, Overrun, or his book, Border Wars, ToddBensman.com. Todd, as always, thanks for being with us. Thank you.
Great work, and congratulations on another publication in the Daily Mail. Good job. Todd Bensman checking in. Check out his stuff, folks, and follow him on X while you're at it.